Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 1979 in a film by's limited series, A Film at 45. I'm David Burns.
And I'm Scott Hoffman. And as usual, we're dusting off the end of a decade that changed cinema forever with a fresh look at modern classics and hidden gems that we can't stop watching. This week, we're having a sort of crossover as we're joined by crewmates from Phaser Set to Stun to talk about Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Starfleet reports our last six crew members are ready to beam up, but one of them is refusing to step into the transporter.
Bones is a thing out there.
Why is any object we don't understand always called a thing?
Headed this way.
Science Officer Spock, reporting as ordered, Captain.
Vessel status fully operational.
Aye, sir.
Mr. Scott, shall we give the Enterprise a proper shakedown?
I would say it's time for that, sir. Aye.
Mr. Sulu, ahead warp one.
Warp one, sir.
Heading, sir.
Out there. That away.
So, welcome to the show, Wayne Whited and Chuck Bryan.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, thanks for having me back again.
No problem. We knew exactly who to bring on to talk about this one.
Yeah, we had this on the radar. This was going to be the crossover event of the year
Yeah.
for phasers and for a film at 45. So we always had that target ready to go. So it's excited to have both of you on here. It really is to talk about
you.
this film. As we mentioned, we are discussing the 45th anniversary of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the film that introduced our OG crew to the cinema. We finally get to see Captain Kirk, Spock, Dr. McCoy, Uhura, Chekhov, and Scotty finally grace the big screen. And along with them, they brought the Enterprise in a very epic story that we're about to break down here for you. But before we do that, Scott, tell us what this film is all about.
Sure. Well, like you said, it's been roughly 10 years since the last new adventure of the USS Enterprise on television, and the first time that Star Trek is venturing onto the big screen. This movie finds Admiral Kirk returning to the bridge of the Enterprise after a long hiatus, and as a mysterious spacecraft vaporizes a small Klingon fleet and a Starfleet space station on its way to the heart of Federation space. Kirk gathers his original crew and takes command of the Enterprise once more, leading the mission to save the Federation from this massive yet unknown threat. Will they be up to the challenge after being away so long? Will this movie breathe life into the franchise? Will Dr. Grizzly Disco Bones change how we look at fashion in the future? We'll talk about that in today's episode.
So here is my honest opinion on this film. I'm going to go ahead and get the elephant out of the room here.
Mhm.
So when I first saw this as a kid, I was super disappointed in it. I wanted plain exploring battles, the stuff I saw in the OG series that I caught in reruns. This was nothing like that. And seriously, it let me down. But luckily, we got Wrath of Khan that came along and kind of set us back on track with that. However, with that being said, watching this film as an adult and knowing more about it, I appreciate this film so much more than I once did. So this is just one of those reversals that, as a kid, I'm like, whatever. It just everything felt off to me. And a lot of people, I think it did. But the older I got, I realized more and I appreciated this film, the story, everything more now. Looking back as a kid, I could understand that. But, what about you guys?
I totally agree with that, Dave. I think there's also a bit of a difference between if you're taking a kid to an amusement park or a museum, right? If you're taking them to a museum and they're expecting an amusement park, they're going to be like, what is all the walking and looking and learning about, right?
Yeah.
What's all this slow study? Um, and I feel like maybe a lot of audiences were expecting that. They weren't expecting um, a longer movie that was a little bit more focused on details and science and contemplation and things like that. But I'm in the same boat. When I first watched this, I ended up actually kind of skipping through a lot of the longer space scenes and a lot of the, hey, look at the ship, kind of long drawn out shots.
Right.
Um, but when I went into it knowing it was a longer movie and knowing the tone that it was kind of setting, and I was ready for it, it became a different movie for me. Chuck, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that in 1979 when I saw this, I also walked away from it. I was very disappointed. Subsequent viewings didn't necessarily help it, but somewhere in my college time frame, I started seeing what the story of this film really
Hmm.
was. And to be honest, I kind of you can clue in on several characters if you wish, because there's several story arcs that are going on in here. For me, I kind of latched on to Spock in
Hmm.
this film. And once I started following his story and his journey, the movie started making a lot more sense to me, and I started finding room to enjoy it. But I have to kind of similarly say what both you and Scott have said, David. Um, it's not Wrath of Khan. It's not. It's not The Search for Spock. It's not Voyage Home. Uh, and but it is something different.
Hmm.
It is a bottle episode, if you will. It's something that's not duplicated. It was the highest grossing of the Star Trek films until the 2009 film came out. So it was very successful for its warts and all. Without it, I don't think we would have had Star Trek 2. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep, completely. Wayne, what about you?
Well, to understand how much I like this film, you have to really understand my origin with Star Trek. You know how I came to get into it, and because I was not a fan of the original series, I didn't follow it as a kid. I didn't grow up with it. I was a Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, GI Joe type person, but
Hmm.
um, I discovered Star Trek. I saw Star Trek 2 and 3 and 4 when they came out in theaters, but I really didn't become a Trekkie until The Next Generation came out.
Hmm.
And then after that point is when I started watching the original series, when I started really devouring anything Star Trek. So there would have been about 1988 or 89 when I first saw the motion picture on videotape. And it was that extended, really long version that should never have been released. Um, I liked it. I really liked the film. I appreciated what they were doing. I did feel it was really too long, which of course I learned later that was because of that specific edit that they had for the videotape. But I love the film. I love everything about it. I thought, I mean, the visual effects are outstanding. The music is outstanding. I love the
Hmm.
actors and the characters. I didn't have all that preconception, that stuff, that anticipation that everybody had from watching the original series. So to me, they were just Kirk, Spock, and McCoy as I knew them from the other films. But it's
Right.
it's no masterpiece. Like you said, it's not Star Trek 2, but it's still very high on my list of favorite films.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good film. I mean,
Yeah,
even the cast even said it didn't feel right to them. It didn't feel like their
yeah.
characters at times. Then they were
Hmm.
struggling with that when they were filming this movie. They have admitted that. So, but when you look at this as a whole film, I love this movie. Do not get me wrong at all. And, I like it a lot more than I used to. And I believe, my understanding is, Gene Roddenberry was going to do a phase two Star Trek.
Yeah,
And a lot of this evolved from that
a lot,
which
including
which
the actual
eventually
script. Yeah.
yeah, which eventually phase two became the next generation, which we all know we absolutely love.
Mhm.
That's what that became. But I mean, I believe they didn't know William Shatner was going to ask. They thought William Shatner was going to ask for too much money coming
Mhm.
back to a new TV series. So that's why they kind of introduced Decker, thinking that he was going to take over that role with the phase two Star Trek. So the fact that the television series really didn't work out and it became the motion picture, if you look at that a lot more, it makes this film look a little bit different, in my opinion.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize how close they came to making phase two. I mean, they came right down to the wire.
Hmm.
They were doing
It,
costumes, the sets were being built, test shots were being done, scripts were written. Which I remember there used to be a book out back in the '80s called I think it was called The Lost Stories or something like that, that
there it
went through
is.
all the scripts, for phase two, and they were really fascinating. But the
Hmm.
the pilot episode, which is basically what the motion picture came to be, other than a few changes at the end, was an incredible story. And yeah, it was missing Spock. I don't know if it would have worked without him, but it's fascinating, this whole thing about phase two. But they came so close to filming within weeks.
Yeah.
filming this. That's how close. So, a lot of the stuff that we see in the motion picture is what we would have saw on the television screen.
Hmm. Just a
Yeah,
bigger scope, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
and you have William Shatner. When they were trying to decide whether or not they were going to bring William Shatner back, they thought, well, I don't think the studio executives really liked him very much, and they didn't think he would translate very well
Hmm.
to a movie. And so their thought was that in Act One, he would be killed off. And so Gene Roddenberry, of course, fought against that tooth and nail, and eventually got him to where he was promoted to admiral. And so that brought in Decker as the
Hmm.
commander. And really, William Decker and
Hmm.
Aaliyah are the only two remaining characters from the original scripts that they were working out,
Yeah.
both for Phase Two. I mean, Phase Two was seriously, this is like everyone knows what happened in May of 1977. That
Hmm.
was Star Wars. That
Mhm.
changed everything. That
Yep.
suddenly showed the studios that science fiction was not only profitable, it was very profitable.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And then Close Encounters of the Third Kind was coming right out right after that. Later in December, or the following year of 1979, Alien was already in the pipeline. It was being made. So science fiction was starting to have its resurgence
Hmm.
to where it could
Yeah.
make really good money. And so here's Paramount juggling between, okay, we're going to make a movie. And
Hmm.
we have this script that's we're going to get Philip Kaufman to direct this movie for us. No, we don't quite
Mhm.
like that anymore. We're going to make it back into a TV show. Maybe it's going to be a movie. No, but then in August of 70, they're going to start going full steam ahead into making this into a movie.
Yep.
Mhm.
I'm
Well,
very
it's also
thankful that they
interesting.
did.
Yeah, it's also kind of you bring up obviously Star Wars changed everything about not only movies and merchandising, but sci-fi at the time, right? It
Yep.
seemed to have
Yep.
kind of
It did.
taken over
Hmm.
sci-fi, and I think when there's
Hmm.
the promise of bringing back one of the granddaddies of sci-fi with Star Trek, I feel like maybe there was an expectation that, well, we can make a lot of money off of this with merchandising, like we
Oh
did
yeah.
with Star Wars.
Hmm.
And they
And
tried.
they tried, yeah. And I know that there were action figures made, but then, thinking back to being a little kid, it goes from seeing Star Wars and all the stuff that goes with that, all of the kind of the play that encourages, to seeing this movie,
Yep.
right? You wouldn't necessarily get the same kind of draw, I think. And
Maybe it would
Right.
be like if
Right.
Silent Running in 2001 came out after Star Wars. Would we
Hmm.
right,
hold either one of those two movies? I
Yeah.
really
right.
feel like Star Trek should have come out maybe before Star Wars, and it would have fit right in that sweet vibe of how the 70s movies looked before
Yeah.
Star Wars. I think
Yep.
after Star Wars, there's a different bar that's been set.
Well,
Absolutely.
I would also say there's kind of a different expectation that people may have come into, if their kids had watched the original series, you've got this charismatic, semi-swashbuckling, debonair Captain Kirk. When we meet him in this movie, he's very dour, I would
Hmm.
say, very controlling. If you um, hadn't had any kind of history with him before, you might think this guy's kind of a jerk, right?
Scott,
Like
that
he's
that was my confusion. When I so remember that, like when I was seeing this movie, I just remembered that I did not understand who Kirk was and why he was so different from the TV show.
right. And you have the kind of the counterpart is Decker, who I think does fit into that pre-movie Kirk kind of mold. He is a little bit more charismatic. He is a good-looking character, right?
Hmm.
And he is trying to kind of like step aside and say like, all right, you're going to take command. Okay, I'm still going to show you when you're wrong, but I'll be here and supportive. So it feels like Decker's character is a little bit more endearing, which knocks the legs out from Kirk, but he kind of sets himself up for that.
Paramount, I think, they had, money they were thinking about money, and of course, obviously, that's what they do. But when Star Wars came out, they probably looked and said, well, what do we got that can match that? And of course, they said Star Trek, and but that's kind of a flawed thinking in their their way, because
Mhm.
I mean, let's be honest, Star Trek is not really geared towards kids like Star Wars is. It's just not. It never has been. Not I'm not saying kids can't enjoy and watch it. We all did, but I mean, it's really not the family type film that Star Wars is. So they tried their best with the action figures, and McDonald's had a Happy Meal. But I mean, think of the motion picture as a kid. You watch this, and it's going to go right over your head. It's like most of this stuff is, who are these people? It's
Right.
not until like you're like a teenager, which is when I saw the film, that you could really appreciate this
Hmm.
film. It's not the family film that's Star Wars, and that's so it was flawed at the beginning, in my opinion.
You still get some brilliance of some of these characters from time to time that you see a little bit of them shine through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get those moments between Kirk and McCoy. You get those moments when Spock, McCoy, and Kirk are all together. You even get the ripping off the Band-Aid, I like to say, when he tells Decker that, sorry, buddy, I'm taking charge of the ship. Those kind of moments. So, and when Scotty was sitting like giving those glances of what was going on. So you still get that brilliance of those characters, but there's still a lot of those element was missing in this film. Um, but they came back strong with Wrath of Khan, so we can forgive them for that. But overall, this movie was beautiful. The special effects were outstanding, and I know every one of us can sit here and agree that Jerry Goldsmith's score is just out of this, on another planet. On
Yeah.
how good the
It's
score
one
is
of
in
his
this
it's
movie.
one
Yeah.
of his best.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's where we get the Next Generation score from. The open, so we get a lot of stuff in this film that we're going to appreciate down the road that maybe not at first we do because it's kind of catching us off guard as a film, but it's still an overall really good film. It's a great adventure of what's going on and trying to discovery of in basically finding it's a satellite, that's and it's a little kid almost basically, I think was it Spock that said that or McCoy,
Yeah, that it's a child.
that it's a
Spock.
child. So there's a lot of stuff in this that is really good at the heart of it. And Chuck, I believe you said if you gravitate towards Spock's character here, you get a lot more appreciation out of this film. And I agree
Oh,
with that. When I watched this again to get ready for this podcast, that's exactly what I did. Because I had forgot some of the elements of this film because I hadn't seen it in so long.
Did you watch the recent release of the director's
I did.
edition? Okay, so
Yes.
you're actually seeing material that there's maybe just to kind of go down the releases that you possibly can see. You can see the original release.
Mhm.
Okay. You
was
can
a
see
mess.
what Wayne saw, which is the special longer
Which is
version, which
Even
was
more
what
of a
was
mess.
was aired on ABC.
Yeah.
In fact, it has one scene where Kirk is coming out of the Enterprise in his spacewalk, and you can see the set and everything all around it because it wasn't finished.
Ugh.
Then you can see I think it was maybe the first director's edition, which was only made for DVD.
2001. I remember
2001.
that.
Thank you. But they did not, the elements of that movie would not scale to high definition. And then back in 20, let's see, it was 2020, so 2022, David Fine and company got to the point where they were redoing all of those effects for the director's edition to come out with a version of this film that had the quality of HDR that could be printed onto film and could be reshown in theaters again.
Yeah.
And that version is pristine. It is gorgeous.
That's
It
the one to
is.
watch.
Yeah. It's the best version. Yeah.
Yes.
It's
And
the finished version.
it puts in parts of Spock's story that were excised. The whole "I weep for V'ger like a brother,"
Yeah.
because V'ger is asking questions that really, I mean, it's the same questions that all humanity, every culture in the world ask these questions about: where did I come from? Where am I going? What do I matter? In the universe. And V'ger has gotten to a point of its sentience to where it's now asking those exact same questions.
Yeah.
And you might be confused about the idea that there's so many different versions of this film, but you have to realize that back in '79, and this is my opinion again, but they made a mistake of setting a date for the release of this film that they just could not
Hmm.
reach. And so the film was released back in 79 pretty much incomplete. It didn't have a proper edit, didn't have a proper sound editing. I mean, they went down to the last minute. If I remember reading a story that Robert Wise actually carried the wet print on the plane with him to the premiere. That's how close it got. I mean, Jerry Goldsmith recorded his last recording session like less than a week before the film was released. So, they really came down. They didn't have enough time to finish this. So some of the visual effects didn't get done. It definitely didn't get a good edit. Because if you watch that original version, there are, times when they're hanging on the characters and it's like, oh, wait, cut, and they're always standing around staring at you. It wasn't really until 2001 that they did a proper edit with Robert Wise. He was in charge of this. I was fortunate back in 2001. I went to a convention in Baltimore about 4 months before this was released, and the visual effects designer that worked on Star Trek Voyager, who also did this motion picture, I think his name was Adam Leibowitz. He did a panel that I got to set in there, and that was the first time I saw any footage from the Motion Picture Director's Edition, and I got to sit there and listen to the technical aspects of putting this together, and it was just absolutely fascinating. But this is something that they wanted to do for years and years. Robert Wise always felt that he never would had a chance to finish this film, and he finally did. And then, of course, with the Blu-ray release, they got to tone it down and got to fine tune it so that it's a perfect but final release. And that's why there's so many different versions.
Just to expand out. So Wayne hit, if we wanted to start talking about production or, what happened with this film, Wayne hit it right on the nail, right on the head. The studio had already sold this film to distributors to be in cinemas on December 7th. It had to be 120 something minutes long. And if they did not get it into the cinemas on that date, now the distributors could start to fine the movie company thousands of dollars. I mean, like in the realm of like a lot of money. So this is what stood over it the entire time. And in my brain, I always have to kind of think about where the timeline actually happened. So if you start in 1979, they finished all the principal photography in right around January of 78, or I'm sorry, January of 79. They finished principal photography. At this point, Star Trek: The Motion Picture had more optical shots than Star Wars and Close Encounters had altogether. And on February, Robert Wise went into a viewing room to see what the original effects company, which was Abel and Company, or Astra, what work that they had, what completed shots they had completed, and they had nothing. They had a little bit of the probe scene. So whenever you look at the film and you kind of notice that probe scene when it comes on board the Enterprise, things look a little bit different there. That's what Abel had worked on in that particular scene, but he had nothing. Abel gets fired. That whole company gets fired. They bring on Douglas Trumbull. Trumbull brings on John Dystra, and now they set up three separate studios or three separate locations in the Marin County area to where they begin working on the effects for this film. They really don't get all of their cameras built out, their software program. This is not, out of the box kind of stuff. This is all highly specialized. They don't really get this completed until like June. That's when they're starting to start to shoot some of that film, June of 78. And they're going 24 hours a day, 3 shifts, just weeks on end. This film, when Mr. Scott says, she'll launch on time, even if we have to get out and drag it out, that speaks for the production of this film, post-production.
And it's rough post-production. I mean, you think about how much visual effects this film has, how many long sequences of visual effects you get. And can you imagine, the film editor the sound editor, Jerry Goldsmith himself, having to just stare at a blank screen for like minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, trying to create stuff, trying to work on this, and they just don't have anything there. There's nothing there to work on, but they still had to do the work. I mean,
It's crazy to think about. That's for sure.
There's a quote somewhere, I can't remember. It might have been who was the studio head? Was it
Eisner, Michael
Eisner, yeah. He was like, this film is going to be out even if we have to put black leader where the effects were supposed to be. It's going to be in theaters on that date. Because they don't guarantee you that you have to have a good movie, right? Obviously,
right? They'll just get live performers to stand up at the front of the screens and just pantomime a little bit,
or the shadow puppet thing. Do the shadow puppet.
Right? Exactly. Well, I tell you what, let's take a little bit of a break.
Yep.
When we come back, let's get into some of our favorite parts of the movie and keep digging deeper into Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
All right, everybody, welcome back where we continue our discussion with Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So, gentlemen, there's a lot to this movie, as we know. We've had some really good discussions of the production of it and those kind of things. So let's dive in a little bit deeper to some of our likes and dislikes. Chuck, what about you?
As far as dislikes go, there's even with the latest version, I still feel that some of the pacing is a little bit still too long for me, because they do through the V'ger cloud where they're flying through it, and then they fly over V'ger, and those two things having happened almost simultaneously back to back, I always felt like that something could have been done to break that up. There could have been something else going on in that time frame. And that, I think for the most part, that's what really has never really worked for me in all of its incarnations. Stuff that I just think is bang on. Even the effects in 79, even though you could see all the matte lines and everything, I didn't know what those were at the time. But even though you can see them, the ship looks gorgeous. I mean,
yes,
the Enterprise, I don't think has ever looked in the films as good as it did. The paint job that was done on that on the model was just incredible. I think the production quality of what you see, it looks good. The money is up there. It's on the screen. It's been spent. And by gosh, I am so glad whatever they had to do to get Nimoy on board. I'm so glad that they got him on board.
That's like one of my favorite shots of this whole movie is when Mr. Scott and Kirk are heading to the Enterprise, and you get those long sweeping shots of the shuttle right going, around the Enterprise, and you get that beautiful score from Jerry Goldsmith. And yeah, that Enterprise has never looked as good as it did in that film. You are absolutely right, Chuck.
Yep. Although there was one thing that was a little weird to me. It seemed like they were going around, like they went around the back of the Enterprise, and it feels like the opening of the shuttle bay was right there, and it looked like it was open. So it was like, why did you have to go all the way around to the side?
He was going to show him the Enterprise. That's what it was. He hasn't seen it in 4 years.
That's true.
So that's what it was. It was like a show.
The full tour.
Yep. That's why I looked at it anyway.
You see Scotty's admiration for it because he does keep looking at Kirk like, come on, this is my bread and butter. This is the big show here. But yeah,
absolutely. Wayne, what about you?
Well, the film, it's such a beautiful film, every last bit about it. But actually, I'm the opposite of you, Chuck. The longer sequences, especially the V'ger flyover, is my favorite part of the film because I think that's when everything gels together. Everyone that's working on this film is doing their best, and they really put out some incredible work for 1979. And those scenes of the flyover don't seem long to me at all because they're just it's eye candy. It's eye candy to me. It's ear candy. Everything's there. I just
that's where
that's an overdose.
Goldsmith's score. I was reading some review where they were they were complimenting Goldsmith's score in that it overhyped some of the sequences a little bit more. But
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no. I don't think you'll find anyone on this podcast who disagrees that having more Jerry is a bad thing.
No, I completely agree with you on that. And we get so many good themes from Jerry in this movie that obviously gets used later on in other Star Trek movies and Next Generation, even Lower Decks,
Mhm.
uses some of those sound effects and stuff like that. The whole V'ger score, but we'll get into that a little bit when we're talking
Mhm.
about Jerry Goldsmith, because we know that's coming. And
Mhm.
so hang on there, listeners. We're going to get to that point. We promise. Scott, what about some likes and dislikes for you?
So just to expand a little bit on I'll start with the dislike, which really focuses on Kirk, because I think unfortunately we don't quite get the Kirk that we get in the subsequent movies
Hmm.
or in the preceding series, what I've seen of it. Um, I think it's interesting that even though he goes to such lengths to take over command, he almost gets them all blown up because he has that inherent misunderstanding of how the new ship works
Mhm.
and basically takes them into a wormhole and almost gets them to collide into an asteroid just because
Yep.
he's rushing things way too much. Um, you also get his introduction to Ilea,
Hmm.
which seems to speak to his reputation preceding himself, or something about her culture I don't quite understand. But the first thing she says to Kirk is that her oath of celibacy remains intact. And it's like, is that something that you have to say when you're announcing yourself to somebody who's new? Is that because of your relationship with Decker, so you want to make sure that there's nothing weird happening there? Or that you know that Kirk has a little bit of a history as a somewhat of a womanizer, and you're
I
just
think it's her
23rd.
race. It's her race.
please
Yeah, I
don't
think
Yeah.
try.
so.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what that explanation was for. It really doesn't come out in the script, but it's her
It's
Right.
race.
yeah.
In
If I remember
Wayne's,
Right.
the book said something about their race being what is it, Delton,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
highly sexual.
Yes.
So I don't know exactly what that means, but
yeah, even
But
the version you saw as a kid, Wayne, expanded out a lot of that those details. Like there's a conversation between Sulu and Chekhov about Delton, and
that's
and
right.
and Sulu
Yeah,
has this kind of
Yep.
goofy look on his face, like ooh, you
yeah.
know. Uh, but
I
all of
think
that is gone.
I think don't Deltons they like have like a pheromone that causes
Yeah.
men or something
Yes.
to swoon over them or something like
Yeah,
that.
and
Yep.
and
yes.
you and you see the way that in the director's edition, you do see where in the probe scene where Chekhov gets burned, Aaliyah goes over, and before they can administer pain medication to him, she says, "I can do this" or whatever, and she puts her hand on his shoulder, and
Mhm.
then you see Chekhov relaxing. So she can use those
Yeah.
pheromones in terms of both the sexual ideal of it, but also in terms of healing as well.
It
Yeah.
makes me
Yeah.
think that maybe the Deltons are slightly telepathic
Could
or
be.
have something
Mhm.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, as far as the likes, um, so I'm coming from this late in the game as a next generation fan. And watching it again for this podcast, this is after I've seen obviously the Next Generation series, the movies, and Picard season one. So what always kind of fascinated me before seeing Picard season one was that I keep seeing parallels or possible connection points to the Borg
Hmm.
with this.
Mhm.
And I think it's a completely different species. I haven't read into expanded canon on it or whatever it is, but
Yeah.
Very
there's a
too
line that
much.
Spock drops about resistance being futile.
Yep.
I was wondering
And
if y'all picked up on that.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
it was
Gosh,
interesting.
I'm so glad you did.
It made my ear kind of perk up a little bit. But
I
I
don't
heard that.
I
Scott, I
don't know if
heard
they've
that.
ever go ahead.
I'm sorry. I heard that line for the first time this weekend when I rewatched this. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I
right,
wonder if these guys are going to hear that same line the
Mhm.
way it hit me this time.
right.
Yeah,
But I
you know,
mean,
it could be. I mean, I don't know if they've ever explored on that, but I know a lot of people have theorized that V'ger come from the Borg.
well, and then there's a second theory that it could be connected to whatever species the Romulans were afraid of that were the prophecy of the synthoids,
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, never
right?
thought of that.
Because
Yep.
it talks about the fact that V'ger goes out to this distant planet that I'm assuming we have no hope of ever contacting or interacting with, that kind of build it up and send it back. But it seems like they're not necessarily interfacing with carbon-based life forms until the end when Alia and Decker fuse to become a higher state of being or whatever. I'm assuming they ascend to whatever level Badgie eventually gets into in lower decks. But
Hmm.
it just seemed to have some of those kind of connection points. And what I like about that are just all the different threads that you could pull to say, what is that world that V'ger comes from?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do agree with that. My only dislike of this entire film is the security guards' uniforms. Did you
Oh,
guys look at those on how crappy those looked?
oh, like the football uniform
Yes.
with a helmet. I
Yeah.
like those.
Yes. Oh my gosh,
Well,
no.
let's talk about the
Football
costume
uniforms, I
shortly.
love
Those
that.
poor guys got thrown around so much in the original series that they said, okay, we need them to have helmets this
That
time.
makes sense. Well,
Well, at least if
I
they can
like the
have a little bit
costumes.
more humility than what Kirk is wearing, where you can see
Yeah.
his secondary badge or whatever you want to call
Well,
it.
well, now a lot of people make fun of these costumes, but what was it?
I
I can't remember the costume. The Robert Fletcher, it's guy that did Batman. I applaud him for trying something different, trying something a little more futuristic. It didn't quite work. The little booty thing, the boots attached to the pants. I didn't like that at all. But it's 70s. It's very 70s.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
okay. I love the costumes because, as I said earlier, this is a film that it's a bottle episode, if you will. It might even be in an alternate universe for all we know, because we never see this again. It's here in this one movie, and then it's never spoken of again.
Yeah.
It's onto the uniforms from Wrath of Khan, and that's how it is
Yeah.
on the way back.
Yeah.
So I love that 70s vibe of it. I think it's at one point I was thinking, would I've changed the costumes? I don't know. I think what shocked me as a kid was that it was not as bright as what it
Yes.
was in the
Yes.
original.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it seemed
That's-
very dull.
That's
Yeah.
my problem. It's not the design of the costume; it's the coloring.
Yeah.
That whole muted '70s brown blue type. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work
Yeah.
as Star Trek. Yeah.
Well,
But
if I'm Scott Bakula, I'm thanking my lucky stars that Enterprise went a different way with their costumes to just be like, just shoot me from the waist up. That's all I
Yeah.
ask. Just the
I
waist
as I
up.
say, there's a reason why they didn't use those uniforms again. They're like, we're done. We're done. Moving on.
Speaking of 70s fashion, are we going to glance right by the fact that Bones in his, casual
Oh.
semi-retirement is not only rocking the Bee
The
Gees
big long
Grizzly
beard.
Adams look,
Now
he's
that's
not
really
only,
'70s.
spreading out the red carpet chest hair for everybody to see. But then he's got the Flavor Flav Barry Gibb medallion
Yeah.
hanging right down there, and I know it's the 70s, but damn, Bones,
Wow.
really?
Yeah.
What are
He is
you
on
wearing?
he is on the dance floor, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
someone comes up and says, "Look, you got a call from some guy Nagura. He wants to talk to you about this little known clause."
Like, damn it, Jim.
Well, Chuck, I think you just uncovered a possible way that they tricked Bones back onto the Enterprise. They just did a Saturday Night Fever kind of lit up dance floor, and he stepped on the wrong part, and it happened to be a transporter pad.
There
And they
you
kept
go.
Yeah.
back through the damn thing.
I think one of the coolest introductions is that we have one guy who doesn't want to use the transporter. He wants to go last. Knew right away who that was. Oh my
Oh, yeah.
boy, what are you doing?
Right. Well, and good reason that the most
I mean, just
horrific,
5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's horrific. Yeah.
That was
was-
down the hallway.
That
Yeah.
was frightening, is what that was. Yeah,
I
Watching
read-
that
If I
again, I'm
saw
like,
that, I
"You're-
wouldn't want to go either.
No.
I read somewhere that they wanted that to be extremely horrific and very painful to the people who were starting to rematerialize. But one of the last things to rematerialize was their mouths. So it's like they're already coming in. They're screaming. They just have no mouth to scream with. So
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
That was
Somebody,
frightening.
if they could have just had a young Jeff Goldblum come by with a little Brundlefly Industries kind of shirt and just be like, I'm just going to look into fixing this. Don't mind me. I'll be over here.
oh,
No.
No. No.
No.
Well, I tell you what, I think we're going to take one more break. And when we come back, let's get a little bit more into the score.
All right, everybody, welcome back, where we continue our discussion with Star Trek: The Motion Picture here at a Film at 45. Well, gentlemen, let's talk about the one thing that we've kind of hinted at, and I know every one of us is dying to talk about. Let's score this film. Beautiful music by Jerry Goldsmith, who we've already mentioned. Quite a few of these themes get reused throughout other series and movies and those kind of things for good reason, because he hit the nail on the head with this score. It is stunning. He was even nominated for the Academy Award for this
Should have
score.
won.
I agree, Wayne. He should have won. And unfortunately, he did not.
Nope.
But Wayne, Chuck, go for it. I know you both want to dive into this score, so be my guest. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Scott, Dave and I will be over here on the side.
Yeah.
Just talk amongst yourselves.
Wayne, well, why don't you start it and I'll hop in.
Well, I I just love this score. It's one of Goldsmith's best. I mean, if I were to look at top five, this is number two. Yeah, it's not quite number one for me, but it is number two. It's very high. This is Goldsmith's Empire Strikes Back as well as it was to Williams. This is the top of his career. Of course, he was cranking out incredible scores around that time, anyways. There were so many good ones, but just the way he uses the orchestra, the themes that he creates, the use of the blaster beam, which was just brilliant. It had been used in a few other films, but nowhere near as perfect as Goldsmith used it here in this. I mean, I hear that every time, and it gives me chills because I mean, to me, that's V'ger. I can't hear anything else, but anywhere else, it's V'ger. That's the sound of that cloud. Every theme on this is perfect. Every note. And it's not surprising that it's perfect because he had a lot of time to work on it, and it was very frustrating for him. I know, very difficult. There was a lot of problems with the recording of it. He had to go back and redo it one time, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But there's just it's great. What more can I say? It's the best part of the film to me.
And we get the most amazing Klingon theme from this film.
Yes, which is used over and over again. He defined the sound of Star Trek with this film. I mean, really, everything after this is goes back to the motion picture and his sound that he created.
Yep.
Well, it's another way that it redefines the Klingons, right? Like,
absolutely.
I'm seeing them with the ridges.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Klingon sequence at the beginning of the film was one of the best in terms of you knew now that you weren't watching TV, you're watching a motion picture because they took this race of beings who pretty much look like humans for all intents and purposes, a little swarthier, if you will. And now they look distinctly alien with everything. And I love that on the Klingon bridge, the commander sits up at the front and everyone else is behind him. And then Jerry Goldsmith's music comes in, and it is the theme. I think we even talked about this in First Contact. I mean, it's the theme for the Klingons that defines them for forever.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So go ahead,
I was going to say the blaster beam. That was one that I had to go and look up because I could hear what it was, and I just could not understand when I would listen to this album how that sound was made.
It's an interesting instrument.
It is. It is incredibly interesting. And I don't know if you can help me remember the name of the person who invented it. It was like Huxley, right?
Craig Huxley.
Craig Huxley,
yes.
yeah. And he was in he was, as a child actor, he was on a couple of episodes of the original series.
Yep.
So little connection with that as well. Thanks for remembering that first name.
Wasn't he in something else? I know he wrote the music that was played during the Genesis Project video for Star Trek 2.
Ooh.
That electronic music. I know he did that, but I swear he did something else in Star Trek 4, but I don't remember now. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredible instrument. It's a huge instrument. It's very impressive to play, and it's still there, and he's still playing it. Recently in concert versions, he's actually brought it out and performed it.
There are great videos on YouTube to go and watch to see him play this because it's very difficult to describe, but it is a stringed instrument on a metal that gets hammered like slapping guitar strings, and it just makes that immense noise.
Yeah.
So like as you guys were discussing on Lower Decks in the opening sequence with The Worst Day Ever, when it pulls out and you see the V'ger cloud and you hear a little bit of a rumble.
Yeah.
Like it would have been great to have a full-on blaster beam there. But,
Yeah, they should have put that on there. I didn't think of that.
I know
Yeah.
I read somewhere that when Robert Wise signed on to direct this film, Paramount Studios said that if asked him if he had any objections of Jerry Goldsmith
Yeah.
scoring this, and because he had worked with Jerry Goldsmith on
Mm.
the Sand Pebbles
Sand Pebbles,
in
fantastic
'66,
score. Yeah.
and he replied, "Hell no, he's great."
Good
Well,
choice.
Yes.
Roddenberry wanted to use Goldsmith back in the original series, but it didn't work out with the scheduling. So, motion picture, and Goldsmith was at the top of his career at that time. So, yeah, they had him. It was no problem.
Yeah.
And his score, is one of the most requested scores. It's been released probably the most of any Star Trek scores of all. It's been re-released 6 times over the years in different various versions or forms. There was the original album,
Hmm.
and then it came out on CD, and then there was an extended version for the 20th anniversary, which I remember when that came out. I was so glad it came out because of the entire score. My favorite piece of music was as a cue called the Force Field, which is the third part of the V'ger flyby, and it was not on the original score. And then we finally got it there. I just love that piece. And then in 2012, we got the 3-disc set from La La Land, which is totally complete. Everything is in there, including the 8 cues that Goldsmith wrote. When he started writing this, he had an idea of scoring this as if it was like a seafaring movie, something like ships and on the ocean. And he went and wrote the music, and then went in and recorded it. And Robert Wise didn't like it. He said, no, that's not what I want. I want a march. I want something that people remember when they come out of the theater. So he had to go back and restart all over again, redo it again. But those 8 pieces of music are on this soundtrack. There was a session in November of '79 where they had already scheduled the orchestra, and Goldsmith was due to go in and record score, and he had nothing new because he had no footage. They had not given him any new footage to record or to write music for. So he went back in and just re-recorded everything from the first session. That's all on this soundtrack, as well as like the disco version of the theme, and some early takes, and everything's on there. And then, of course, there was the vinyl release in 2017, and then they released it again in 22 for the 2-disc director's edition. So, I mean, you can tell this, out of all the Goldsmith scores, is the most wanted score. It's been in print almost its entire 45 years.
To expand on part of the story Wayne was telling there, when the piece of music that Goldsmith had played for the director, and he did not like it. Goldsmith went back, and that is where the theme came out of, because what was missing was a theme in it to start to glue everything together, and then that became from those sessions is where that theme started to derive.
It's almost there. You can almost hear that Star Trek theme, but
it wants to be
not
there.
quite. Yeah, it wants to be there, but it's not quite there. And then also recently, this actually came to a surprise. There was a company that was releasing the print version of the score, the orchestral papers that, and when they were doing their research, they found 5 pieces of music that Goldsmith had written and was never recorded. He decided not to use an alternate version of the merge at the end with Ilea and Decker.
I need to get that.
Yeah, those were actually recorded. Joe Kramer was another fantastic composer. He did one of the Mission Impossible films. He also works on Doctor Who. He went and recorded those 5 pieces of music, and they're actually available. They're not on any of the motion picture CDs, but they are available on a set that La La Land brought out called Star Trek: The Final Frontier, which is a 4-disc mix of all TV series and stuff. Plus, you can find them on YouTube too.
Also on YouTube, you can find the Sean Cassidy disco version of A Star Beyond Time.
Yeah,
which is the Ilea love theme.
Yeah, the 70s had this thing about doing well, ever since Star Wars and their disco version, it seemed like everybody had to do a disco version.
Of course.
Well, one of the interesting things that I saw, and I always watch these things with subtitles just because I've had, kids in the house for the longest time, so I can't help but watch something with subtitles. But obviously the theme caught my attention because it's used for Next Generation. But the title of his Life is a Dream. Is that right?
No, that's for Star Trek Five. That was the title that he came up for that film. I
Okay.
don't believe it has a special. The Ilia's theme is called A Star Beyond Time.
So what's interesting is it says in there, Life is a Dream plays as it's
Interesting.
playing that song. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know I had a name. Apparently it doesn't. Kind of interesting.
That was something that was he. I know they used that name for Star Trek Five, but maybe they just retro named everything that I don't know.
All right, well, let's move on and let's quote this. Anybody find any interesting quotes about this movie?
Yeah, I found one. Leonard Nimoy, he wrote a few books about Star Trek. He wrote a book called Star Trek Memories, and he briefly talked about the film. And he said that while it was a finely crafted film and it did well, but from the actor's point of view, frankly, it was frustrating. We didn't feel like we were getting to play the characters that we enjoyed playing in the way that we knew how to play them. And it was frustrating for Gene Roddenberry, too. It wasn't the story or script that he wanted, and the gaps seemed filled with too much emphasis on special effects. I agree with him. I mean, in what he's saying. It had to have been frustrating for them.
Yeah,
They know their characters. Everybody knows their characters. Even if it's been 10 years since they played them, they knew them well. And to have to stick to a script that they felt that, didn't quite portray their characters properly,
yeah,
that had to have been very frustrating. Now,
agreed.
on the flip side, though, and I was going to say this earlier, a lot of people criticize that all these characters don't seem like they're Kirk, Spock, McCoy, but these are characters that hadn't seen each other for a while. It's like going to the school reunion and you're seeing these people like 10 years later, and you're going to act weird. You're not going to sure exactly how everyone's going to act. You're going to be a little distance from one another until you get to know them a little better and you start talking, and then you start getting back into it. And by the end of the film, I feel that that's what happened. They started getting back into their characters by the end of the film.
That's a good point. It really is. I found one from James Doohan. He's basically just talking about Star Trek in general. He says, I really didn't have to work, shall we say, with Star Trek. It was a natural. When I opened my mouth, there was Scotty. It's like I tell people what you see in Scotty is 99% James Doohan and 1% accent.
I have a quote from Jerry Goldsmith, and I pulled this one because I may have said this to you, David, in email. I don't know where I stopped loving maybe this movie and where the production of this movie, how it got made, is what I really love. The fact that we even have this movie, it's a miracle. It could have gone wrong. I mean, if they would have had 2 more weeks to even test this film to see, I think we would have had a different film. But anyways, Jerry Goldsmith, I found this quote from him, and it's a little bit lengthy, but it's good. He said, I think the picture for what it is a miracle. I enjoyed the picture. It's not a great work of art. I don't know what picture is, and it's entertaining. A person has to be into this sort of thing and like this sort of thing. There are people who go to see it 4 or 5 times and they're crazy about it, and there are other people who just don't like it. But for what it is, I mean, it is Star Trek. And it's an area you either have to like Star Trek or don't to go see this picture. But like I say, I think it's a miracle. And Alan Dean Foster even echoed some of the sentiments when he said, I mean, when you think about it, it's really a miracle that this picture got made at all.
That's true. With all the problems they had, it's amazing that it came out.
Well, very thankful that it did, because I don't think if it wouldn't have been made, we wouldn't have got Wrath of Khan,
Oh no.
Search for Spock, anything. So,
Well, and it may not have even had the franchise continuing at all,
correct.
right? Like it
No
was
next
banking on
generation.
this to
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if it continued on as phase two, let's say if it was made as a television series, it probably would have ran,
2 or 3
if it was
years.
successful, 5 or 6 years. Yeah, I don't know if it made it that far. Let's say 5 years at the most, four.
Yeah.
But there would be no next generation. I think that would have
No.
probably been the end of it. I mean, they may have talked about a film, but I don't think they would have ever made one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the 2 hour television series was going to be called In Thy Image.
Yep.
That was the
I
pilot.
believe. Yeah, that was the pilot. Mhm.
Yeah, the script that became the motion picture. Yeah.
Right.
There was a great episode too from phase two that where it had Kirk in a transporter accident being transported back to World War II Pearl Harbor. I absolutely love that script. There's so many great scripts. If you look it up, look up Star Trek 2, read some of the stuff. It's fascinating. If you're a Star Trek fan and never heard of it, look this stuff up.
Yeah.
That that makes me think of the final countdown for some reason.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of that too. Yeah,
Yeah, there's a book out called Star Trek Phase Two by Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens,
that's a great book. Yeah.
and it has a lot of scripts from the Phase Two and a lot of information about that. And
Mhm.
I think the Phase Two uh, has been documented so well that for anyone who loves Star Trek, seek out those books for that
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
look it up.
Yep. I
Even
agree.
looking up information on the movie that almost was it The Planet of the Titans,
Hmm.
which was going to be directed by Philip Kaufman, who went on to make Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Right Stuff. So there were other attempts that were made, and I think they're all interesting in terms of seeing what everyone was working on in Star Trek between the end of the animated series up until the motion picture. And it was a long time from like 73 all the way up to 79. It was in motion. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Dave,
to,
Dave, this sounds like a future episode to get Chuck and Wayne to
It
walk
does.
us through the what if
I
and
Phase
would
like
two.
love
Yeah.
to talk about that. I would absolutely love let's plan that because this
Cool.
will be a
right.
fascinating subject.
So there you
Yeah.
go, listeners. We got an episode's gonna be coming down the road about phase two for sure. Yeah,
by the way,
that
the
sounds great.
Phase Two Enterprise is
I love it.
awesome.
Oh,
It's
it's awesome.
it's the Enterprise that wasn't,
Yeah.
and it's somewhere in between the original series Enterprise and the motion picture
Mhm.
Enterprise. It's just mm,
And the model, which they built the model, was used on some of the motion pictures early posters. I have one of the posters. It's
it
on
was on the back of the
it's
comics.
yeah, yeah, that was the same picture. It's a little chunky, but I love it. It's
And
gorgeous model.
I'm curious, was Enterprise purple at all?
No.
Not yet. We'll talk about that. That does bring up a good point. With lower decks slowing down a bit,
Yeah.
they've clearly shown that animation works, whether it's
Hmm.
taking a comedic spin or not. Maybe it could have a little bit of that to get a broader reach for audiences, but if
I
they have
agree.
all those things as visual references, there's nothing to say they couldn't basically animate
Yeah.
the phase two stories or some of them and, catch some interest.
I
Two of
agree.
the scripts were made. The Next Generation
Made
borrowed
'em.
two of the scripts, one for The Child and the other one for Devil's Due. So, Paramount still has those scripts. They could still use them anytime.
Well, you listening to Paramount? We want them.
Yep.
Well, I mean, that kind of leads us into talking about the impact of this film. You guys just kind of hint on some of that. Like, if this movie would not have been made, we probably would not have the Star Trek that we have today, the series that we have, the films that we have, and it would be completely something different, if anything at all. So this film really set up, even though we already had the TV series, the original TV series, this film really set up an entire franchise that just exploded, not only on the big screen, but on the small screen too, with television, because we got the next generation, and that's my love. And I'm sure it is for all of you guys on here.
Yes.
The next generation just made me fall in love with Star Trek. And that's my OG crew.
Mhm.
And when I go to conventions, that's who I hunt down. I want to meet them because that's who I grew up with.
Mhm.
And to think that if this film did not happen and I would not have gotten them, that's a scary thought, guys. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it speaks to you've got to think of the makeup of the formula that led to this even being seen as a success
Hmm.
because it wasn't a perfect movie. It didn't have perfect returns, but I think a fair amount of that was people that already had love for the franchise and possibly saw an opportunity to introduce somebody else to it and kind of pass that on.
Right.
So, to the fan base out there that's continuing to keep this kind of stuff going, it makes a difference because I
Yep.
think this is, similar with Star Wars. You have different iterations that reach a different generation in different ways. And Prodigy is a great example of that. Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks are other, examples of how those things can be future iterations, but there's a place for it to continue.
Right.
And I think this speaks to that a lot.
All right. So, gentlemen, where did everybody see this at? I obviously have it on DVD and Blu-ray. So, where'd you guys catch it at?
For me, it was Paramount Plus. Whenever I'm looking for Star Trek, that's where I start.
Good place to go. Chuck, Wayne, I'm sure
Yeah,
you
I
both own
have.
copies.
I have the director's edition. It was like the complete adventure, which has the original. It has
Mhm.
all the ones that I described earlier in it. What's interesting with the special longer version SLV, which Wayne saw as it was his first, is that they actually went in that one scene where Kirk is coming out. They completed the special
Yeah.
effect for that, so that you're able to see it and it not pull you out. But if you so desire to see it as it was, you can see that as well.
You can't miss it. Even when I saw the for the first time back in '88, I saw the rafters. It. You can't miss that bit. But that's how I saw it. I saw the same way. I've got that same edition that you've got because I love this film and I have more copies of this than probably any other film I have that's out there. But yep, that's where I
Yeah.
watched it from.
Excellent. Well, Wayne and Chuck, thank you so much for joining us for here at Film at 45 slash Phaser Set the Stun.
Yeah, thank you
Since this
both.
is,
Oh,
Chuck, I
our
know you've
pleasure.
got a new podcast. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. It's
Yeah.
called Cinematic Flashback, and we focus on films of the 70s. And my friend Matt and I, we've gone back and looked at The French Connection, which is a classic film in terms of how uh, police procedural and dramas started to change from the 60s and into the more gritty 70s.
Hmm.
And then we covered a film that was new to me, and this is why I like my friend Matt is he introduced me to a film called Breaking Away, which came out in '79. It
Hmm.
won the Academy Award for screenplay that was written for the
Mhm.
screen, not an adaptation by Steve Tessich. And really enjoyed that film. And I'm just realizing now that Star Trek: The Motion Picture is in the 70s, so we'll have to wait
Yep.
some time before we can cover that one. But I might see if I can get you guys and we can re-talk about it again.
Sure.
That'd be great.
You don't
Yeah.
have to tell us twice to go do that
Yeah,
for you because we love Star Trek, as you know. So,
absolutely. No,
yeah.
but yeah, thank you. Yeah, so cinematicflashback.com. We are on Spotify, all the streaming platforms, and you can get us also at cinematicflashback.com as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, listeners, go check that out. That sounds like a fantastic idea. So, go out there and listen to what he has to offer on that podcast. As always, I want to thank our listeners and hope you are excited as much. We don't have very much left of 1979. We've got one more film to cover, and that's The Black Hole, which is
Yeah.
coming up. That's going to be the
Yeah.
one to end us for 1979. And we're going to be doing that with Dayton from Docking Bay 77. So we are looking forward to tackling that one and having you listening to us talk about it. All right. So if you want to reach us, you can find us at www.filmbypodcast.com. You can write to us at afilmbypodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Until our film reels start rolling again, go out, watch something new, watch something different, and who knows what you will discover next. Thanks, everyone.